random page. Oh, we got to a tail. We got a tail. All right, so we have ChatGPT. So this is one good thing about ChatGPT is that it can summarize this for me. Interesting. Wow. So this is amazing. This is a nice tale. Haven't looked who wrote this yet, and I like to not do that until I've made up my mind about what I think about the piece. But this is a really, really, really good tale on the SCP Foundation wiki. Reptilius. It's a little hint. Anytime you see reptile on the SCP wiki, you should probably think of one thing, and the author is doing a very good job of sort of dangling this in front of you while not giving it away totally. This is really well done. So I love that we have gone back in time and are chilling with Plato and Socrates, Maecenas the skeptic, Copernicus the clueless one. I love these epithets. Mactavius the victim. It keeps the formality of the format but puts it into a very interesting time. Kind of reminds me of Socratic containment procedures, which was a 4,000 contest entry that was pretty well liked. Doing clever stuff like this. But yeah, I mean, the writing's excellent. Whoever wrote this nailed the dialogue in this. Really, really great stuff. This is very believable as a Plato work. I'll just say this. The person who wrote this understands very clearly what SCP-682 is supposed to be. I don't know when this was written. I don't know if they've read Dr. Gears' commentary on what SCP-682 was initially supposed to be and the thought process behind it, but this captures it perfectly. SCP-682 as the ideal form of a lizard, and therefore is destructive of people because it wants to not be possessed by the material world and wants to return solely to the idealized sort of platonic abstract world, which is exactly what Dr. Gears had in mind with this thing. So I'm going to see who wrote this. Salmon Corvette. Oh my gosh, dude. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. 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 2012. Wow. You know, it's funny. The people who can write really good comedy are sometimes the best writers. And the people who write really crappy comedy are not good writers. So the current gaggle of comedians all over the SCP Wiki. I'm talking about you, Harry Blank, Rounderhouse, Plague PJP, J Dune. You guys aren't funny like Salmon Corvette was funny, and you can't write like Salmon Corvette writes. This is amazing. This is so good. God. So 62 is a platonic ideal. It would explain a lot. It's perfect. Perfect connection. Yeah, it should form a lot of your 682 headcanon. This is nail on the head, dead on balls accurate. A brilliant connection of the dots. You philosophical son of a bitch, exactly. I missed a feta, by the way. I missed a feta. Somebody shouts out Socratic creation principles, a lot like Socratic containment. So, Socratic containment procedures, SCP-4500. It's a good one. It's a good one. Does its job very well. Multiple collapsibles, multiple inception layers of collapsibles here. This is an old trick, but it was kind of forgotten, and this sort of played it very well. You know, it's times like this that I sometimes am glad that we come across a tale, and this is one of those times. I don't think I'm ever going to hit a random tale intentionally on the RPC. Sorry. All right, so this is a longish one, so let's just kind of see what's going on here. We'll talk to ChatGPT. No spelling and grammatical errors. Excellent job. Mood is scientific intense. Wow. So this is a really interesting RPC in that it is an early number, RPC-018, and yet shows a surprising amount of sophistication. Once again, this is my kind of style of containment fiction, which is that you have a very interesting anomaly. The anomaly itself is not mundane. It's not just an afterthought or a stepping stone or a doormat that you sort of unceremoniously wipe your feet on so that you can get to the real juicy bits of narrative and character studies. This is a very interesting anomaly. It's a thaumaturgic pathogen, which by itself is a very to me, very novel idea that I think is very clever. And it's hard to do the typical trope of communicable pathogen virus anomaly. It's hard to do that well. I love the way the author sort of shows you and implies what this is, why it was built, without going into a very lengthy, sort of throat clearing about its discovery, about its inventor, and some note or journal that was left with the inventor. It's almost like painting and leaving the negative spaces as the most important parts. In one of them, you can't meaningfully communicate about political assassination, another about authoritarian governance, another about thaumaturgic engineering, another about human augmentation. And these are almost like tags, right? And when you put them together, you get really a cloud of an idea. And not only that, but a very dense, rich cloud that also kind of tips the motive behind why this was produced, who might have done it, for what purpose, and what the ultimate goal of something like this was. And once you kind of wrap your head around that and start to piece that together with the rest of the article, it's really very, very clever. I mean, this is sort of somebody manufacturing an anti-meme in a thaumaturgic and pathogenic delivery package. I mean, it's very interesting. It's clear that a group has developed RPC-018 for the sake of silencing any leaks regarding themselves or their operations. While as of yet our thaumaturgic knowledge is limited, I believe it would be of great interest to the authority if it were to develop our own variant. We already have to deal with occasional information breaches. So the author decided to make this explicit, which is a decision that I question. But having said that, they do take it into an interesting direction. Of course, it does not end well for the authority. Yeah, I think it actually would have been more powerful if it just left it here, because it crossed out the 5. It talks about thaumaturgic development. And so we can sort of infer everything in this incident 5R without actually having it spelled out in a way that this does. So I think that this is a really, really good article. It's got a great idea. It doesn't have to be the sun. It doesn't have to be the moon. It's content to be the light in the corner of this room kind of thing. And it's very, very cozy. There's just a little bit of a compositional trip up here where we take a little bit of a wrong turn. It's not bad though. It just is not as good as it could have been. And at 3.3, I think this is actually a little underrated for what I think this article provides. So let's see who this was written by, just to give him some credit. Since Offender, who since has been off the site. You see how I did that? Let's see, this is very discussed though, inspired by the vocal cord parasites in Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah, I guess I see that now. As well as how in some communities you can't talk about certain things without getting banned. This is written in June 2018. I wonder what this is about. I wonder really, it fits very nicely in the context, in the larger context of things. But yeah, it is, by the way, just as an aside, it is absolutely crazy that SCP, a nominally artistic project, requires you to abide by their very specific, very radical political ideas before you can actually contribute. That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. That is insane. Von Pincher said this is really, really solid. It's a little bit vocal cord parasite-y, but I think it works regardless. Even Almerduck likes it. Very interesting concept with even more interesting implications. I would die to see a longer, more elaborate version of this article that's explored the great aspects instead of the redundant test log and somewhat inconsequential incident. I do agree with that part completely. Held up well over time. Writing something in the midst of the 2018 June controversy and it actually having been about the events has the potential, like a lot of SCPs have, to be just smacking with political elitism, and this one doesn't really do that. It really comes out in the comments more than the actual article. I was starting to get the impression that this information was being purposely withheld, but then the next collapsible tells it directly, so what's the point? That's exactly my point. That's a good observation by Double Denial, who's an excellent author on the RPC Authority now. This is really, really, really good for its time, at the least. All right, the etc. for today is actually a draft request. That's right, we got someone requesting us to look at a draft of theirs, and so let's do this. This is our good buddy Fern Lom, Dr. Fern. Everybody knows him, everybody loves him. So we're gonna go through this. He asked me to look at this, and so we'll do it together. All right, so this sentence, the first one of the containment procedures, is just a little clunky. Just consider moving that in Site 82 up here earlier in the sentence. So SCP is contained in a standard humanoid containment cell in Site 82 with the standard furnishing for docile cooperative sentient entities. Just flows a little better. The dash A is to be contained in a high temperature resistant artifact storage unit. The high temperature resistant should be hyphenated. All that should be hyphenated. You should have a hyphen between high and temperature and a hyphen between temperature and resistant. So I immediately am suspicious that this article is not going to do well. I mean, you can only really sort of afford, blatant self-insert or author avatar ship once you sort of have enough of the bank at the SCP Wiki. It's all about celebrity culture, and so if you're making a self-insert or an author avatar and you don't have a lot of celebrity capital at the SCP, it's just not going to fly. People can get away with doing this blatant of self-insertion, but I think it only comes once you've already, ascended to this level of near celebrity where people stop really thinking critically about your writing. I mean, the details of like these specific of details just automatically sort of scream that this is basically just like me writing, myself into an SCP, which is not an interesting premise, not to say that the person writing isn't interesting. It's just, that's a really unfortunate way to try to utilize the format. It's right here should not be apostrophe. The entity wears a black half-face gas mask, which is kind of a mouthful to get through there. You could just say a black gas mask. The respirator vents occasionally producing thick black smoke during exhaling. That should be exhalation. And then, the placement of this messaging is also, it makes me immediately suspicious that the article is not going to be very sophisticated, because you're basically plastering a billboard literally onto the back of your anomaly, telling us what it is exactly that you're going for, which is Fern, that's capitalized, Lam, which is your name, Fern Lam. And so I appreciate that you've sort of couched this into some cleverness here in a phrase. Once again, Osham also is kind of clever, but it just screams one thing, which is that we're just interested in making ourselves an SCP here. Once again, this "it's" should not have an apostrophe. "It's" is only used when it is. The third paragraph of this is where we get into really troublesome and worrying territory for the SCP. Once we get to the point of not only this being a rather obvious self-insert, but we've gotten to the point now where it's almost like an X-Men, it's almost like a Marvel character, where the effect that this self-insert has on others is so anomalously good that it's almost guaranteed in universe to be useful, and so that the character is well liked and desired and sought after, So once again, it just, we've got to find a better use for the format than just essentially a glorified Twitter bio. I think we should put the footnote after the period, if you can. We're getting into Mary Sue territory here. This is, I can tell you 100% this is not going to fly in the SCP Wiki. It's just not. NFTs does not need an apostrophe. Once again, its weapon should not have an apostrophe. Yeah, even the characterization is, it doesn't really get any neurons firing for me, because we have an anomaly who has willfully given himself up to the Foundation, and we're not really sure why, It just seems to suit the plot very well. It's not interesting. You would sort of imagine the character would not want to be contained by the SCP Foundation, and so this already seems to sort of miss out on some opportunities for additional interest beyond just this being a character-focused study on, the author's avatar. So we need to capitalize this U. I think at this point in the interview, we've hit a wall in terms of organic, believable discussion, because once your interviewer, this is really a DJ Cactus flaw that has made its way through the SCP Wiki. Interviews typically will have the interviewer saying very mild things, very slight reactions, going like, I see, interesting, stuff like that. And it quickly becomes into this sort of almost like ping pong like exchange, almost a very robotic thing. It's almost like what you would get if you talk to ChatGPT, where it's just like, oh, okay, and then here's the next question, and here's an answer. Oh, and here's the next question. And it just kind of lends itself well to exposition, but way, way too transparently, to the point where it's kind of it's kind of mind-numbing to read. It's just sort of like it's like watching a ping pong match where the people aren't they're just being as straightforward as possible with their playing, and it's just almost as if the point is to hit the ping pong over the table as simply and agreeably as possible. It doesn't feel real, and it doesn't really have any drama to it. It just feels very plastic and wooden and lifeless. And so once you get to this point in the dialogue where the interviewer is saying, interesting, please continue, I mean, it's almost like forcing a position down the reader's throat. The reader should be saying this in their mind, behind the scenes, behind the read. Your characters shouldn't be saying this. That's almost like you giving yourself praise. It's almost like you praising your own dialogue writing. This "it's" also needs to not have an apostrophe. So I couldn't tell you how my power works. It just does, sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. At this point, we're sort of just shrugging our shoulders at the audience. And this is so prepackaged and just delivered in such a straightforward way as to say, I want to write an SCP about my own character who is really cool, that it just doesn't resonate with anyone. This P in the SCP needs to be capitalized. The noun version of effect always starts with an E. If there is an effect of something, it's an E. If it is a verb, like I am affecting you, that's an A. So this affects needs to be effects. And, once again, it doesn't really, the backstory that we've been given here doesn't really help sort of glue anything in the article together. Why is it a firefighter? Why is there really, I kind of get why there's a gas mask on him after reading the interview. What is the connection with this anomaly helping people be better artists? Why artists? This art is misspelled. Well, I like the idea of these egos being sort of like quanta of phenomenon that can help you. But this, once again, reads just like, the Misters, the Little Misters, or Gamers Against Weed, or any of those little mini-series that the author is trying to start really as sort of a buttress to their own author avatar and self-insert. So I really like this ego idea. I think this is the best part of the article. I think this is a really fertile sort of framework to work in, and it's going to give you a lot of opportunities to write. I just think that these things need to be thoroughly interesting and really have nothing to do with the author's avatar. I think we need to get rid of that idea. We get sort of like an inception of self-inserts. There's another Dr. Fern who's already at site 17, and that's how the article ends, is invoking a second already existing self-insert. So I think, this is not going to survive on the SCP Wiki. I don't think it has much going for it. I think this is a fine idea, but that we need to really dive into each of these and explore things like creativity more than the ego side of things. No offense. We need to do creativity more than Osham, right? We need to completely redo this entire article. I think this is going to fail spectacularly. I don't think this is going to do well. I think it'll be almost immediately deleted from the SCP Wiki, and I don't want to see that happen. So what are some ways that we can improve this? Well, this is a really good use of ChatGPT. Okay, this is how ChatGPT can help you be a better writer. Now I'm going to use GPT-4. Please analyze this. Note any grammatical or spelling errors. Give me the main themes, characters, and ideas. Also the emotions and mood. This is a wonderful way to do your usual Word document sort of editing in a more interesting fashion. Grammatical and spelling errors. There's a few instances where there should be contractions instead of incorrect words, such as aren't should be aren't and it's should be it's. We talked about that. There are minor punctuation and capitalization issues, such as a missing period after mask and a capital letter for human that should be lowercase. Considering changing affect to effect when referring to the impact that the SCP has on others, like we talked about. Main themes: anomalous humanoid entities with unique abilities. This is a red flag. If you put this into ChatGPT and it pulls this out, this is This is an excellent feedback mechanism that you don't need help with from anybody because of ChatGPT, GPT-4. That if you see this, this is a major red flag. Anomalous humanoid entities with unique abilities, your article is over with, unless you're Rounderhouse or DJ Cactus or someone like that, or Harry Blank. Creative potential and the unlocking of mental limitations. This is a very tucked away theme of this article. It wasn't listed as the first one, right? It's listed as the second one for a reason. It's not as prominent in the article as this first one is. We need to reprioritize and organize this article so that these two things, creative potential and unlocking of the mental limitations, second chances, and redemption, are more center stage. The story, the narrative, the background narrative behind the character doesn't really click well. There's not a whole lot of interesting things there. It's very wooden. It's just sort of set up, and it's exposited to the audience just very flatly. There's no real depth to it, three-dimensionality to it, no action to it, not a lot of comedy to it even. This is it, Dr. Tillman, Site 82 Sentient Anomaly Head Researcher who interviews SCP-7325. That's really literally all this Dr. Tillman is. It's just a stand-in to, almost like a tool to pry open the avatar a little further so we can see into it better. That's really the only purpose of Dr. Tillman. I mean, there's a little moment in there where Dr. Tillman's experiencing the euphoric effects of the SCP, but even that sort of falls back and shines onto the author avatar. The weapon doesn't really come back into play at all. I don't really know why that's there. We could take it out. The article would be better without it. And it's almost just like it's included because it would be cool to have that weapon, which is a bad reason. I mean, that might be true, but that's a bad reason to include it in your article. Just think about it this way. There's absolutely no internal development to this character whatsoever. I mean, we've got the situation that they were in before, being a surgeon and killing people, and then suddenly they're helping people, but we don't really get to see that internal transformation any more than it's just told to us in a near-death experience sort of packaging. We don't really we don't really understand who the character was and how they changed, and we don't get to follow them through that. I think that would be a much more interesting article. What are some ways we could make this article more interesting and include a surprise plot twist? So once again, I'm not recommending that you just take the ideas from ChatGPT. I'm just getting you into the way of thinking that you can use this as a writing tool, as an assistant to help you and to guide you. So here we've asked GPT-4, what are some ways we can make this article more interesting and include a surprising plot twist? Number one, hidden connection. Introduce a connection between the SCP and another SCP, suggesting that their creation was part of a larger plan. This connection could be discovered in a later addendum or through a series of encrypted messages that researchers uncode. Number two, unintended consequences. Initially, SCP's ability seems to be purely beneficial, however, revealed that prolonged exposure to the effect causes severe side effects, such as mental instability, hallucinations, or addiction to the enhanced creativity. This twist would raise moral questions about the use of SCP's power. I hope this is very clear that this is an instantly more interesting article if you include this, because it's not just as straightforward as it benefiting people and yay. The true creator, the Ferntastic conglomerate may not be the true creator of Fern's ego's line. Instead, reveal that they are a front for a more sinister organization or entity like the Chaos Insurgency or previously unknown group. This revelation would lead to further investigation, so that's interesting if you wanted to make the character and the setup a little more mysterious. Hidden ability. SCP could have had a hidden ability that it has been concealing from researchers. The ability might be something darker or more dangerous than its creatively enhancing effect, such as the power to control or influence the minds of those it has helped. See, we've got to introduce some shades of different colors here, some different flavors. Right now, the dish is just one flavor, and it's not really a fantastic flavor. It's just one flavor. There's no spice. There's no ingredients other than just self-insert good. The true purpose, the heated cricket bat, could be revealed as something more significant than just a weapon. For example, it might be a key to unlock a hidden chamber or portal, or it could have the power to neutralize or control other SCPs. That's a twist that could change it. The other egos. Introduce a storyline where the other egos have been discovered and are causing significant problems or working together for a shared goal. SCP-7 might the SCP might be the only one who can stop them or help the Foundation understand their true nature. So I mean, once again, that's kind of what you're getting to. But in order to launch, it's like a rocket launch. You got to have a lot of combustible fuel that goes off at once and at work, and it'd be very hot. In order for something like the Wondertainment Misters, Little Misters, or the Wondertainment series, or anything like these mini-series kind of stuff, to get off the ground and have people want to contribute to it, it's got to be really, really good. So I would not advocate this idea of spreading out all of your eggs across all these baskets. I would put all of your eggs in one basket, try to make it the best basket that you can, and then hope that it catches on and other people will bring their own baskets. This needs a lot of work, and I'm saying this because I care about the author. I want the author to succeed, but I guess hard love time, this is not going to survive in the SCP Wiki. It's not nearly interesting enough. It doesn't have enough creativity behind it. It doesn't understand where it needs to go. It's meandering. It's monodimensional. It's trite for probably early SCP standards. I don't think this would have done well as a Series 1 article. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. I think what's really going to help, my main advice to the author knows that I have an issue with self-inserts, but that is way over here. Okay, even if I didn't have an issue with the self-inserts, morally speaking, or ethically speaking, I would still encourage you to get rid of the idea of the self-insert because it is clearly affecting the ability for you to write better things. It's sort of like this heavy gravity that everything is being pulled into, and it's just not, it's not really, it's keeping your article back from being something much better. So I think we need to get out of this idea of a self-insert. That's my biggest piece of advice. All right, so I think the SCP tale was the winner this time. That was a fantastic tale, and damn, I've never read anything by Salmon Corbett that wasn't a joke article, and those are fantastic. So I'm just super impressed. That was a fantastic tale. So hopefully these videos sort of start to develop in your mind an idea of how things are good, why they're good, what makes them good, and subsequently how you can make your stuff better. A lot of the times these days, early numbers on RPC are auctioned off for contests, and the winner gets to put their entry in the slot. That sounded really bad.